This week on the Gonez show, flights canceled and people told to tanayayad or just stay home. Yeah, the government ain't playing no more. Plus, should we cancel the Olympics this year? We're gonna get into it. And a turf war in the streets that even has the police worried. You're gonna wanna hear the details on this story. We also talk with one small business owner that's at risk of losing everything in this week's Your Voice. And is Toronto doing enough to support our artists, or are we just a bunch of haters? Yeah, I catch up with rapper Kofi on that subject in Open and Honest. So sit back, relax, maybe grab a snack. The Gonez show starts right now. Hey BG Squad, I'm your host Gonez, and thank you so much for joining us for episode 3. But you know we got some homework that you need to do, so make sure to hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell, and hit us up on our socials. Follow us because our numbers ton up. You know what time it is. It's time for News You Can Use. All right, we have a lot to talk about this week, and of course the big story are the new travel restrictions that are now in place here in Canada. So if you're watching this and you're Canadian and you're not in these borders, you better find yourself back home. And fast, because I'm sure you've heard by now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he has issued these new travel restrictions, and it has some people divided. Take a listen.
The government and Canada's main airlines have agreed to suspend service to sun destinations right away.
So here's the thing. We're talking Air Canada, WestJet, Sunwing, Air Transat. These are all of the country's biggest airlines. They have now canceled flights to Caribbean hotspots and Mexico, and that takes place immediately and lasts until at least April 30th. So basically, what is the government trying to tell us? To stay home. We're not gonna be able to escape this winter because COVID-19 is still here, even if we don't wanna believe it. And here's the thing, just in case you're not understanding that message, because I know some of us don't wanna believe it, well, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, he wanted to ensure that we all kind of understood it. Watch this video. Premier, I'm just gonna tell you, you've now made it on our newest segment.
Excuse me, you're doing too much.
And I'm just gonna be honest, as a Jamaican, it kind of feels a little bit nice to hear, you know, the Premier, I guess, acknowledge our dialect. But I also should say that Jamaicans fully understand and can comprehend English.
Rate his accent out of 1 to 10.
I don't want to do that because I think one day we might want to have him on the show, okay? We might want to have him on the show, but I do, and I would love to know, what language did the Premier communicate to his own ministers in when they were caught traveling abroad during a pandemic? I'm just going to hold those receipts right there. But anyhow, for Canadians returning back home, and if you know any Canadian that's abroad and needs to come back home, you should probably tell them to contact their airlines immediately so they can arrange a way to get back home.
I wonder what this means for dual citizens, like myself, who also has a Jamaican passport. Will I not be able to go?
Well, right now, I mean, if you're in Canada and if you're a Canadian, you are being told to stay home. It's best to stay here right now while this pandemic gets under control. But I want to talk about these new restrictions because take a look at your screen right now. Incoming Canadian travelers, listen to this, they must take a COVID-19 test upon landing. Here's the other new restriction. Canadian travelers must also quarantine in a designated hotel for, get this, 3 days at their own expense. And when you add up those expenses, it could add up to about $2,000.
Crazy.
Yeah, not cheap. But the real question is, why did it take the government so long to implement something like this? And really ponder that for a second, because we also want to ask ourselves, why hasn't or why didn't the government implement a negative test requirement in the first stages of this pandemic? I pose that question because when you look at other countries like, let's say, New Zealand, for example, they did this during the first wave. And you know where New Zealand is now? They're acting as if everything is normal. They're basically COVID-free. So it's why we ask this question. Do you think these new measures are going to help slow the spread of COVID-19? Or is it a little too late? Chime off right now in the comment section. We want to hear what you have to say. Okay, we also have to talk about the Olympics. And listen, I love the Olympics. I love to cheer on Canada. I love to cheer on Jamaica. I love to cheer on my countries. But should the Olympics be canceled this year because of the pandemic? And it's expected, well, it is supposed to take place in Tokyo. And the reason why I asked that question is because last year, the Olympics had to be canceled because of COVID-19, and they were rescheduled for later on this year. But here's the thing, it sounds like Japan, the country, might be having cold feet. I want you to take a look at your screen right now, because citing an unidentified source, the London Times said the Japanese government has decided the Olympics must be canceled. But here's the thing, we're kind of hearing conflicting statements right now. So the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they've come out saying that they're ready and they are going to be moving forward with the Olympics in Tokyo come July. And I know this is such a tough one for many people, because this year, I mean, even last year, it's been so negative. There's been so much negativity, you know, on the air in terms of news and just around us. And we all know the Olympics, they bring a sense of positivity, a sense of optimism. And if you're an athlete, I mean, you kind of train your entire life for this moment.
There's a big challenge though, because why are we allowed to watch the NBA and the NFL and the NHL, but not athletes that, you know, are in the Olympics? Like, I'm not getting that.
And that's the thing, that's what a lot of people are trying to compare it to. But the thing with the Olympics is that it's such a massive event. We're talking about bringing tens of thousands of people to one city, congregating in one city, people who could be coming from COVID-19 hotspots. So it really begs the question for me, really, when I heard about this story and we were researching this story, is what do the people of Tokyo feel about this? How do they feel about this? And I want to show you a study that just came out too. This survey, take a look at your screen. It was conducted by the Japanese public broadcaster NHK, and it found that more than 75% of respondents said the game should either be canceled or postponed again. On top of that, you also have to ask the question, will athletes be required to get vaccinated if they're going to attend the Olympics? And if they are going to be required to do that, are they going to then have the privilege of butting the line? Meaning that what happens to all of our essential healthcare workers, for example, who've been waiting to get vaccinated, or people in long-term care homes?
That's a great question. Did they say anything about that?
Well, here's the thing. We're still waiting to see what the IOC, what their plans are, their safety plans are for the games. But it is something that so many people are questioning, because it does beg a very controversial question. And it's why we asked you this at the top of this segment. Do you think the Olympics should be canceled this year? And it's okay if you don't agree, or if you do agree. We want to hear what you have to say, so get a little messy. Have you heard about the turf war that's going on in the streets right now in the Greater Toronto area? I ask you that because it's not between rival gangs and it's not between drug dealers. It's actually between tow truck drivers. Let me say that again. Tow truck drivers. No. That's how nervous I am talking about this story.
It's dangerous.
Right? And it's still going on, and it is quite dangerous, Burns. You're right, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there's some serious beef that's ongoing right now, and we need to talk about it. So take a look at your screen, because there have thus far been 11 arrests, more than $1 million in drugs seized, dozens of firearms seized, and at least 4 people have died related to this turf war.
Drugs?
This is crazy.
Yeah, no. Tow truck drivers.
That makes sense. You see how fast they drive?
Yeah, well, you know what it's all about.
Business?
It's all about this turf war, and basically what they want is control over highways in southern Ontario. So let me break it down for you, because last year you may have remembered or heard about this project that the York Regional Police started. It was called Project Platinum. And this project, take a look, it identified several organized crime groups that have infiltrated the industry using, and I quote, violence and property damage as a means to gain control and territory within the industry. As a matter of fact, part of that investigation actually outlined one particular company called Paramount Towing. Now, that company, they've been slapped with a massive, multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And the owner right now has been charged and arrested with multiple offenses. But guess what? The beef, it's still going on. And it even has some police officers worried. In fact, one officer spoke with this media outlet.
I've been told to watch myself,
Or else?
or else I could be next.
That's frightening.
I worry about my wife.
You think they're that ruthless that they'd go after your wife?
Yeah. They went after an innocent doctor, didn't they?
Mistaken identity.
Mistaken identity. However, it just goes to show these aren't sometimes the smartest people we're dealing with. And they really have no qualms about who they go after.
Yeah. So as you could hear there, this guy's not joking. And this is the police who are there to serve and protect. And you could hear the worry in his voice.
But Brandon, let me ask you, like, does this surprise you? Have you ever, been on the highway and had to get a tow truck and they're all running towards you viciously to get your business? Like, does this seem that far-fetched?
And that's the thing. There are so many people who have these similar type of stories, and that's what we're going to actually ask you, because we want to know, have you encountered, a sketchy situation with a tow truck company? Because listen to this, these rival firms, they're defrauding insurance companies, and guess what? Some auto repair shops and car and truck rental firms and companies, they're also in on it too, allegedly, some of them. So this is a story that's heating up. It's one that has a lot of people a little bit nervous, but of course, we're gonna continue following it here on the Brandon Gonez Show and give you all the updates. So please let me know, have you ever had a bad or questionable experience with tow truck drivers in Southern Ontario? In the meantime, just promise me you'll be safe, because we need you here next week, okay? That's your news you could use for the week. Hey BG Squad, on this week's Your Voice, we wanted to talk with people caught at a crossroad. So many small business owners have reached out to us saying they're at risk of losing their livelihoods because they haven't been able to access COVID-19 emergency relief funding. So now, it's time to find out why that is. Jordan, tell me about your restaurant and how did this all come to fruition?
I've always liked Queen Street, and I find Queen West was one of the most iconic streets downtown.
So what are you seeing right now on Queen Street? Are businesses closing?
So I also work with the Queen West BIA, and I've been doing bi-monthly vacancy counts. And at the start of the pandemic, we were sitting just under 30. And when I did my count last week, we were just under 80. So we're sitting at approximately a 33 to 35% vacancy rate.
So we got this place end of November and signed the lease, a 10-year lease. Planning to open on April.
April of 2020?
April of 2020, as when we got the lease, this was a whole different restaurant. It was Harlem Underground. The bar was over here, and we gutted the whole entire thing. And then when we found out about COVID, we kind of put everything on halt. It's tough because I have a landlord that's asking for rent, and it's nothing on him, it's his business as well. But it's tough to pay this kind of a space to only sell takeout food or coffee.
It's a trickle-down effect. So, your payment processing vendor still needs to be paid. Your alcohol account still needs to be paid. You still have to pay what's called TMI, taxes, maintenance, insurance. Those are fixed costs that don't change. Whether you're open, closed, those still have to be covered.
During this pandemic, the government did put out a lot of support for individuals and for small businesses to try to keep as many people afloat as possible. Were you able to access some of those resources, some of those funds?
So they did do a lot of stuff for small business, but unfortunately we fall in the category of 2020 new businesses.
What does that mean?
Basically, when you go to the website and try to get that CEBA loan, that 40K or now a 60K rent subsidy, wage subsidy, you have to put in your 2019 financials. So because we opened in 2020, there's no 2019 financials, hence we're not eligible.
The other thing that I'm hearing is that this Ontario support grant that's $10,000 to $20,000, not many people so far have received the full $20,000.
Knowing that right now you can't access that emergency support for small businesses that the government has out there, what's your biggest fear at this point?
My biggest fear is they're going to change the locks on the doors, and I'm just going to lose the business.
We're going to not see and recognize our favorite neighborhood streets. It's going to be filled with who knows what.
Do you have a family?
I have a girlfriend and she has kids, so trying to support that as well. But I'm hardly home because I'm always here too. It's a tough thing to do.
What should the government do to ensure that those businesses don't die off?
There's a couple of things that the government can do. They really need to reiterate and enforce a commercial eviction moratorium. They also need to make sure that the money flows faster into the bank accounts of small businesses, and just make sure that there are supports and make it easily accessible for new businesses, old businesses, have support hotline so that people understand what they're applying for and can ask questions along the way.
They're presenting something in the House of Commons next month, they said, but that's still next month. They could close my doors tomorrow.
If you could tell either Premier Doug Ford or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau one thing, what would that be?
Let's work together. Let's make things accessible, easy, and fair. Let's make things fair for all levels of business, no matter how old, how young they are, what industry they're in. Let's make everything really fair.
It's the faster response that we can get ahead of this so that together we can recover as a city, as a community in better times.
Jordan, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And if this impacts you or you know anyone else caught at a similar crossroad, reach out to us because we're reaching out to the government to get you answers. Hey, BG Squad, big question for you. Does Toronto and Canada support our artists enough? Or are there just too many haters who love the drama? Yeah, we're gonna get open and honest. In fact, we spoke with popular Toronto rapper Kofi about this exact topic after he went viral speaking about his own experiences.
We are one of the most talented cities, provinces for that matter. Yo, we have Drake, The Weeknd, Tory Lanez, Justin Bieber, producers, Murder Beats, Boy Wonder. Like I could go on Shawn Mendes. I could go on all day. It's just we're shooting each other and then we're talking about it. Like we're giving the feds a field day. Like this is ridiculous. If we just stick to our music and focus on our music and promote our music, we could be a superpower in the world. Like we could take over the whole music industry, but nah. We want to just be out here spreading violence and hate. It's crazy.
So let's talk about that video. The video that has been making waves. You talking about the fact that the city has so much talent and that people in the city support that talent. What was going through your mind when you made that video?
To be honest, I made that video. What prompted it was really, I heard that Bugs got, I don't know whether it was arrested or anything, basically because of all of the lives and something that happened on Instagram. And I don't know anything about like the politics or anything in that situation, but what I do know is Bugs was an artist when I was a producer just starting out, and he was showing me love, and he kind of even put me on in the rap game as a producer. So you just hate to see it, you know?
Your story's so interesting. Like you were a volleyball player.
Yeah.
I used to be a volleyball player too. And then you turned rapper. So for the people watching, I mean, how did that decision come into play? Like where did you decide that you want to put down the volleyball and take up the mic?
Well, I always loved music even before I was a volleyball player. I was always like producing, engineering, even like writing scores for like the school band and stuff. So it was kind of something I always thought I would come back to. I didn't even think volleyball would take me as far as it did, but I'm lucky. It let me spend 4 years paid for in LA where I could just develop my music.
What is it like being a rapper in Toronto? How does a rapper make a living?
The way to make a living in music is just to run up your streams, get as many listeners. Well, now because there's no more selling songs, it's more just getting people to stream your records and then taking those profits and taking some to you to pay the bills and then taking some and using that for marketing. But I don't know, in Toronto, it's kind of difficult just because of the whole gang aspect of it.
Talk to me a bit more about that. Like, what do you mean by that aspect of it?
Like, say it could be a strategic move for me to make a song with, and like we'll just say with some person, but because of Toronto, now that I made a song with this person, I can't make a song with this person because these people don't like each other.
Do you ever get nervous that you could get caught in the middle of things?
Yeah, it's something like I'd be lying if I said that it's not on my mind. You just have to really watch how you step and make very calculated movements.
Why do you think, we're seeing this type of, I hate to say the word violence, but this retaliation back and forth right now?
I think that Toronto does have a lot of problems with gang violence. But I think that that's definitely made worse by the fact that that's kind of what consumers want to see on the blogs, or not even that that's what they want to see. That's just that's what they engage with. That's what they'll comment, and which, it just drives up the numbers for the blogs, and that's what they're going to post. Now they're all on live together with academics, people that hate each other. And, that can escalate any situation.
You just did a track with Doovie.
I go straight to the top and no stopping it. Roll me my check and I pocket it. Up on road day one shopping it. I see it, I wanna copping it.
Linking up with the next Toronto, artist. That's a big deal for the city.
Yeah, it's really weird because I'm from Scarborough, Doovie's from Jane. It's rare, but it came together through my homie KG, and Doovie's super talented. Like that, he didn't even write a single word. He just went into the booth and just started freestyling.
Any messiness going on in your DMs?
Messiness? No, not really. They're pretty hectic because I respond to like everyone, but everyone that's showing love. If they're not showing love, I don't respond. But yeah, no, it's pretty clean. I'll tell you the craziest DM moment. I was at Regulars. I forget what I did, but Drizzy hit me up. That was just crazy. Just being an artist from Toronto, that was wild. Yeah, that's probably the craziest DM moment. One of my homies has my Instagram on his phone as well, because he helps with my marketing and everything. He literally pulled up on me to show me on spot, and I was downtown and he was in Scarborough. So
how do you stay focused, and where do you see yourself kind of going?
I see myself being a huge artist one day. I know it sounds cocky, but you gotta aim high. So I see myself being a big artist one day in multiple genres. And how I stay focused, I have a pretty good team. I have an amazing team around me, I should say, who just help me stay focused on every single day. If I'm not in the studio, I'm figuring out how to market the tracks as well as I can.
All right, Kofi, thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for being open and honest with us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No, honestly, wasn't Kofi really, really cool? Plus, he brought up so many interesting points. And I also just want to remind you guys to check out his new track with Doovie called Space Cadet. And if I could urge you to do one more thing, is to make sure to check out the Canadian music scene, because there are so many great Canadian artists out there. All right, you know what time it is. It's time for good news. We made it to good news. And we have a lot of goodness to talk about. As we enter February and we talk about Black history, we know that a Black woman has entered the White House down south. And now that same administration is ensuring that an historical moment that was almost erased is going to be cemented on paper. Watch this.
The Treasury Department is taking steps to resume efforts to put Harriet Tubman on the front of the new $20 notes.
Maybe we do the $2 bill, or we do another bill. I don't like seeing it. Yes, I think it's pure political correctness.
We're exploring ways to speed up that effort.
Now, that's real goodness. That's real goodness. That's real goodness. No, because that man tried it. He tried it. Bye. Boy, bye. I should also talk about, what you say, birds? Gone. Gone like the wind. We should also highlight the fact that here in Canada, we have reached this milestone. Activist Viola Desmond is on our $10 bill. So if you don't know about it, definitely Google it, because that is someone you should definitely know about. And we also want to remind our viewers this. Listen, if you got any good news stories, any stories for that matter, email us. news@brandongonezshow.com. Of course, we love that you joined us this week. Of course, we're gonna be here again next week. So set your alarms and make sure to, again, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and follow us on all of our socials. Hey, BG Squad, we love you for watching. We'll see you next week.